She hid 3 university letters in her nightstand for years. Caltech, Princeton, a university in Germany, all of them begging to take her 9-year-old son off her hands and turn him into the scientist he was born to be. She never told him. She never told her husband. She buried genius-level opportunities under her own underwear drawer like they were shameful secrets. And if you think that was about protecting Sheldon, you have not been paying attention. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand that Mary Cooper didn't hide those letters to protect her son. She hid them to protect herself. And once you see the deal she made with God on the day her daughter almost died, you will never watch a single soft kitty scene the same way again. Stick around, because the last 4 minutes of this video cover the one scene in young Sheldon that quietly rewrites everything Big Bang Theory told you about who George Cooper really was. And it changes who the villain of this family actually is. If you're new here, subscribe now, because we break down the characters everyone thinks they already understand and prove you don't know them at all. Let's start where nobody starts. With the 2 kids Mary Cooper let disappear, Missy Cooper does not get a redemption arc. She does not get a spin-off. She gets a childhood spent standing next to a brother who absorbed every ounce of oxygen in the house, and a mother who let it happen without ever once stopping to ask what it was doing to her daughter. There's a term for this in family psychology, the glass child. It describes kids who grow up beside a sibling with intense needs, whose parents look straight through them because there's simply no attention left over. Missy says it herself, almost offhand, like she's stopped expecting anyone to notice. Her dad and Georgie have football. Her mom and Meemaw have Sheldon. She has nothing. Nobody's teammate, nobody's project, just background noise in her own family. And here's the detail that should make you angry if it doesn't already. The only time Missy gets Mary's attention is when she does something wrong. Watch the Professor Proton photo scene again. Missy is already crying, already deep in some preteen emotional spiral that nobody bothered to ask her about. And Sheldon walks in and starts needling her, mocking her, telling her that maybe her attitude is why she has boy problems. She snaps. She rips his photo. And Mary doesn't ask what happened. Doesn't ask why her daughter was crying in the first place. Sheldon's property got damaged, so Missy is the criminal. Every single time. But here's the part that turns this from typical favoritism into something much colder. There's an episode, The Twins Study, where researchers sit Mary down and show her actual data. Real evidence that Missy is lonely, that she's emotionally starved, that the imbalance in this house is measurably hurting her. And Mary looks at it. She feels the guilt. You can see it land on her face. And then nothing changes. She goes right back to the exact same pattern within episodes, because being the mother of a genius gives her something being the mother of a happy, ordinary girl never could. Status, purpose, a reason to matter. She had proof, and she chose the version of motherhood that fed her ego over the one that would have healed her daughter. Now, Georgie, if Missy is invisible, Georgie is actively insulted. Mary calls him dumb as soup. Not once, not as a throwaway joke, but as a running family label so entrenched that Sheldon is still repeating it to friends in California years later, like it's just a fact, like it's just who his brother is. Meemaw treats him the same way, as if he's constitutionally incapable of contributing anything meaningful to this family, and the show spends years quietly proving them both catastrophically wrong. Georgie has real emotional intelligence. He's running side businesses as a teenager. He turns a tire shop into something bigger than anyone in that house imagined he was capable of. And after George Sr. dies, it's Georgie, not Mary, not Meemaw, who holds the entire family together. He supports his grieving mother financially. He helps raise Missy. He manages a newborn and a new marriage while he's barely out of his teens himself. That's not a deadbeat. That's the most responsible adult in the entire family. And Mary never tells Sheldon any of it. She lets her genius son sit in California believing his brother is a failure, and she never once corrects the record, because correcting it would mean admitting Georgie deserved more credit than she ever gave him. Protecting Sheldon's image of himself as the special one meant actively erasing his brother's sacrifice. That's not love. That's favoritism with teeth. But none of that, not the favoritism, not the neglect, is actually the center of who Mary Cooper is. The center of who she is happened in a hospital room during the birth of the twins, when Missy nearly died. Because here's what almost nobody talks about. Mary's faith wasn't a slow spiritual awakening. It was a transaction. In that moment of panic, she made a deal with God, save my daughter, and I will change everything about how I live. Missy survived. And Mary held up her end of the bargain instantly. She went from a wild teenager who drank and smoked and snuck out to a rigid, by-the-book Southern Baptist almost overnight. That's not a woman who found grace. That's a woman who found a business partner. Follow the rules, and he keeps your family safe. That was the entire arrangement from day one. And for a while, and this is the part people skip past too fast, it actually worked, and it made her better. Early young Sheldon Mary is a genuinely complicated, admirable person. She takes in Mandy McAllister, a pregnant teenager thrown out by her own parents, even though sheltering her directly violates what her church preaches. She argues with her own pastor. She sits with real doubt. There's an episode where Sheldon explains gravity to her, and instead of shutting him down, she uses it to reconnect with the idea of a creator, not through blind obedience, but through actual curiosity. That version of Mary was flawed but trying. That version of Mary you could root for. Two things destroyed her. The first is Pastor Rob. Watch how vicious Mary is toward George for getting too close to Brenda Sparks, their neighbor. She tears into him. She's merciless. And the entire time she's sneaking off for secret smoke breaks with a young, attractive pastor, sharing feelings with him she isn't sharing with her own husband, having dreams about him she'd never admit to out loud. When George actually catches her, laughing, smoking, completely at ease with Rob outside the church, after George drove out there guilt-ridden over his own behavior, the hypocrisy in that moment is suffocating. But in Mary's mind, none of it counts because it's spiritual, because a pastor is involved, because the church setting launders the guilt right out of it. That's the move she makes for the rest of her life. If religion touches it, it doesn't count as a sin. And then the second thing happens. George dies. No warning. A heart attack at work on an ordinary morning where he says, "See y'all later," like it's nothing, and then he's gone. Mary never gets to apologize for the emotional affair. Never gets to undo the years of undermining him in front of his own kids. Never gets to tell him, in a way that actually landed, that she loved him. That unfinished business doesn't fade. It calcifies. And she buries it under God. Not the forgiving version of God she'd been slowly discovering, but the punishing, controlling version. The version where if she prays hard enough, follows the rules strictly enough, forces obedience aggressively enough, she can claw back control over a universe that just proved it could take everything from her without asking permission. Which brings us to the baptism scene. The moment I'd argue is the actual turning point of her entire character, more important than anything Big Bang Theory ever showed you. Weeks after George dies, Mary demands Sheldon and Missy get baptized immediately. She's frantic, she's sobbing, she says she can't sleep unless she knows their souls are secured. And here's what makes this so devastating. She is a lifelong Southern Baptist. She knows, theologically, that forced baptism means nothing in her own denomination. Baptists believe in believers' baptism, it has to be chosen, it has to come from real personal faith, or it's meaningless by the church's own doctrine. She knows this. She does it anyway, because she's not doing it for God anymore. She's doing it for herself. She needs a ritual. She needs to physically do something to make the chaos stop. Sheldon agrees, not because he believes a word of it, but because he loves his mother and can't stand watching her fall apart. He even wears a wetsuit into the water because he's terrified of germs and does it anyway for her. Missy refuses and runs out of the church in tears. And Mary reads Sheldon's compliance as proof, actual divine confirmation that her approach works. A pure act of love from a 9-year-old gets twisted into evidence that pushing harder, controlling more, was the right call all along. That moment locks everything in place. And it gets worse because of an accident of good intentions. Meemaw tells the kids to just go along with Mary's intensity, assuming it's temporary grief that'll fade with time. It never fades because nobody ever tells her she's gone too far. Meemaw moves in with Dale. Sheldon leaves for Caltech. Georgie starts his own family. Missy pulls away. And Mary is left alone in that house with no one left to challenge her worldview. Just the church, just God, just years of isolation, slowly hardening a complicated, empathetic woman into the character we meet in Big Bang Theory. And that brings us to the part of this story that should genuinely unsettle you. What Mary did to George's memory. In Big Bang Theory, Mary talks about George constantly, casually, like it's just an established fact of her life, as a lazy drunk who cheated on her. But you and I watched young Sheldon. That man was not that guy. He liked his beer, sure. He came dangerously close to crossing a line with Brenda, yes. But he's also the man who worked himself to exhaustion trying to buy Sheldon a computer through honest labor. He turned down his dream coaching job in Tulsa because Mary manipulated him into staying put. He coached football with real, unshowy passion. He loved his kids in the quiet, unglamorous way that never gets praised on camera, but holds a family together anyway. Mary rewrote him completely. And once you understand why, it stops being a plot inconsistency and starts being one of the most quietly tragic things in either show. If George was terrible, losing him doesn't hurt as much. If he was the cheater, she gets to be the righteous victim instead of the woman with unresolved guilt over an emotional affair she never confessed. She built a version of the past that protected her, and she repeated it so many times to so many people that she started believing her own rewrite. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. Remember the famous Big Bang Theory scene? Sheldon explaining his triple knock habit, saying he once caught his father with another woman? Young Sheldon reveals what actually happened. It was George and Mary, together in a costume, Mary in a blonde wig, trying to spice up their marriage. Sheldon didn't recognize his own mother. He assumed the worst about his father and never said a word, never asked, never found out the truth. Mary has no idea what Sheldon thinks he witnessed that night. So when adult Mary tells people George cheated, she isn't lying about something she saw. She's repeating a story she built out of guilt and grief, and it fused so completely with her memory that she can't tell the difference anymore between what happened and what she needed to have happened, which leaves us with the contradiction that defines her. The Sheldon Paradox. Her son is an outspoken atheist. He mocks her religion to her face. His entire career is built on a worldview that directly contradicts hers, and she forgives all of it instantly, every time. She flies across the country to take care of him, she sings him to sleep, she meets his defiance with tenderness she rarely offers anyone else in that family. Meanwhile, Georgie builds an actual business empire from nothing, and she still calls him stupid. Missy goes through a divorce, and Mary is barely present for it emotionally. And toward everyone outside her family, the cruelty sharpens further, mocking other religions, making comments about Judaism and Hinduism that are flatly bigoted, treated as punchlines in the show instead of what they actually are. That's not simple ignorance. That's what happens when someone's entire moral framework exists for one purpose only: to keep the pain out. Sheldon is the only person exempted from her judgment, because Sheldon is the last living thread connecting her to the version of her life that still made sense. Before George died, before the house emptied out, before she became the person she used to swear she'd never turn into. So is Mary Cooper a saint or is she a hypocrite? Honestly, neither answer is big enough for what she actually is. She's what happens when a genuinely traumatized person grabs onto religion like the last piece of driftwood after a shipwreck and refuses to let go even as it drags everyone she loves under with her. She started with real empathy, real, searching faith, and grief turned both of those things into weapons. One baptism, one rewritten memory, one favored child at a time. Every sharp comment in Big Bang Theory, every double standard, every joke that isn't really a joke, it was never comedy. It was a scar with a laugh track over it. And the part that should sit with you longest isn't that she became this person. It's that she had every chance to heal, and every single time, she chose the version of God that punishes over the one that forgives. If this changed how you see the Coopers, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, because we're doing this again next week with a character you think you've already figured out. You're wrong. Come find out why.